Welcome to another episode of Prolific Mind Podcast. I am your host, Anquinette Irvin. This podcast is geared towards promoting mental wellness and personal development. My goal is to plant seeds that will help you shift your perspective. Today, I have a special guest on my podcast, Rakeeta. Rakeeta is a licensed professional counselor, sex therapist, and health equity consultant located in the state of Alaska. She owns a private practice where her focus is prenatal mental health and relationship therapy. Rakeeta believes health is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and socioeconomical. A practice she brings into her therapy space, into the spaces of workshops, workplaces, as a BIPOC health equity consultant. Rakeeta has a new book coming out in the fall that focuses on the mental, emotional, and spiritual health of entrepreneurial women of color. Wow, that is an extensive introductions. And as I was reading your bio, I'm like, okay, it's amazing that she's going to be a guest on this podcast because our beliefs kind of in the same alignment. Whereas we talk about the physical, the mental, spiritual, physical, and socioeconomic, because I think all of that is important in mental health, not just physical, not just mental. I believe in treating the whole. So, Rakeeta, I gave the bio an introduction. What do you want to tell the guests a little more about yourself?
Well, I wanted to say thank you for having me. Thank you for having this space for Black individuals, being a Black woman yourself, and just knowing the struggles that we deal with. And I just want to say, I feel like we need more of us out there. And I'm so happy that I can be here to just share what I'm doing and even share some more of what you're doing so we can inspire other people.
Thank you so much. And I'm lucky to have you as a guest because I like to bring different people on to talk about their niche and their business just to see that Black women do a lot of different things. So how did you get, what piqued your interest in becoming a counselor?
So I think I started out like a lot of people. I was like, well, I'm always giving advice. So it must mean I can be a therapist, which is totally not accurate because it's a lot to it.
So did it start when you were younger or older when you wanted to be a counselor?
I think it started when I was older, maybe after undergrad. I was like, what am I going to do? It was when it was like '06, '07, and, we had the economic downturn and stuff like that. And it's like, well, what am I going to do? Because the bachelors don't really mean as much as it used to. Where am I going to go from here? And I thought about just going back to grad school, and I said, okay, I can be a therapist.
Okay. So how was mental health for you growing up? Like now we see it on TikTok. Some of us are on social media, but back then it was kind of like taboo or weren't talked about. How was it for you growing up in your household as it relates to like mental health?
Oh, it was so taboo. It was so taboo. I gave birth to my first child in South Korea. I was teaching English abroad, and I met my husband there. And I was experiencing postpartum depression. Well, what I thought was, I know now as a perinatal mental health therapist, I was experiencing postpartum OCD. And that's having the intrusive thought, feeling like I might harm my baby, and having those scary thoughts. So I mentioned to my mom, like, yeah, I got an appointment with my therapist. I was seeing an online therapist since I was in Korea. And she's like, okay. Then she hung up and texted me, oh my gosh, I hope you also not taking medicine. Like it was that taboo. She couldn't even say it. She had to type it out.
Yeah. And I never heard of that. What you called it? Postpartum OCD. So is it a difference
Yes,
between postpartum depression and postpartum OCD?
definitely. You can have both, or you can just have one or the other. So the difference is when you have depression, you don't feel like doing anything, like getting out of bed. What you used to do, you don't do anymore. You feel tired all the time. But with the OCD piece, that's when those thoughts come in. Like for me, it was I'm scared I'm gonna drop my baby downstairs because we have stairs. And I just want to also just put a trigger warning out there for people if you're listening to this. If you have anything like this that happens, please go see a medical professional.
Mm-hmm.
I think also it is difficult for Black people to go see a medical professional because we are afraid what's going to happen if we say these things to other people.
Yeah. So when you start seeing your therapist, did your primary care physician seek that therapist for you, or did you go looking on your own? Or did they
I
refer?
went looking on my own since I was in Korea, and I made sure she was a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I read her bio, and it said she was also someone that experienced postpartum depression. So I was like, okay, this person might know what's going on with me.
Okay, good. Yeah. So when you're currently located in Alaska, where are you
Mm-hmm.
originally from?
I'm originally from Georgia,
Okay.
South Georgia.
South Georgia. Okay, South
Mm-hmm.
Georgia. So what population you currently work with?
I currently work with the LGBTQIA population, and I also work with BIPOC individuals, especially Black women.
Okay. With carrying so many hats, what is the most challenging part for you as a therapist?
Um, I think it is carrying my clients with me throughout the day because I'm always thinking about them. Could I have said this better in session? Did they get enough of what they need in session? So I also got to take care of myself and make sure I keep whatever is in session as much as possible.
Okay. And then you said, as earlier I mentioned about the sex therapist. Can you tell the audience what do a sex therapist do?
Yes. So they can do a normal number of things. I think we think a sex therapist just talks about how to have sex in this type of position. That could be true too, but they also work with sexual trauma. If you've had an assault in your past, if it's affecting how you have sex with your current partner, you would want to go and get help with that because you want to be able to enjoy sex. Sex should be pleasurable. They also talk about um, sexual wellness. If you, for example, maybe have a leaky bladder, what does that mean? They would refer you to a pelvic floor therapist so that they can strengthen that muscle because some people who've had sexual assault in the past, they might have an issue with their pelvic floor. So they just know how to go and connect you with others and work through the traumas that you've experienced.
Okay, and we need that because I know someone, it goes to both things that you were saying, like the sex therapist and also prenatal mental health. I know someone that said like after she gave birth, it was painful for her to like have sex. And she don't know if it's more mental now on her or more physical. And she was like, maybe she needs to go see a mental health therapist and also her primary care physician to like do a rule out to see what it is. So I like that your career, the sex therapist and the prenatal mental health go
Mm-hmm.
hand in hand. And she also suffered from postpartum.
She's on the right track. She is on there for real. So if you see her, let her know. We would also rule out first physical, and then it could just be both. It could
Mm-hmm.
be mental and physical. So just checking herself out for both.
Yeah. Okay. So in your field with the prenatal mental health, what are some things you work with your clients on?
I work with my clients on postpartum anhedonia, like they have given birth and they don't feel that connection with their baby.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, I should be wanting to be with my baby. What is going on? Is there something wrong with me? And I don't normalize it. I just make them feel like it is okay to experience what you're experiencing right now. Totally okay. Nobody tells us what it's like when you give birth. They just, on TV, it's you give birth and you're happy,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But there is more to it than that because what comes with it is your historical trauma, the intergenerational trauma, maybe relationship issues. That's why I also merge both because now you got a baby in the mix and
Mm-hmm.
you and your partner are trying to parent. So there's so much to it when it comes to postpartum work.
Yeah, and it's so prevalent, so prevalent because so many women struggle with that behind closed doors because the fear of being judged, the fear that I don't feel any connection with this person, or the stigmas that's associated with different mental health diagnoses. What are some of the misconceptions of therapy or mental health that you have heard about it that's a barrier for people seeking treatment?
Yes, most recently someone said that's for white people. And I will beg to differ on that. If we don't get help as a culture, as a community, we risk giving this to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to do better for each generation. We got to heal our wounds so that we don't give it to them. Or if, we got to do repair work as well. Make a mistake, apologize. That's so hard for our community to do. I've heard so many of my clients and my friends say, I never even heard my parent apologize to me. And I just think that is mind blowing. And I want to normalize that, at least repair work in our community.
Yes, most definitely repair work, and then hear the different stories and talking about it on these platforms, because I think it was this year where I had the opportunity to work with teens and their depression and anxiety rate was up. But underneath all of that, the number one cause and problems that they were going to was parental conflict with the adult talking to you any kind of way. Because of religion, they're not seeking therapy. Communication was a big one. I had them individually, but then I recognized that all of them had the same problems, and I formed a group for them. And that was like amazing to let them see they weren't the only one going through this during the pandemic. And in the Black community, we got to break that generational pattern and curse and barrier of not apologizing. I'm right, you're wrong. Or just because it's your child and they tell you what they're going through, you call them the grandma, the auntie, or the cousin. Like, that's their business. And that's why you want to talk to me, because I feel like you listen to me, or I can't talk to my mom about it. She's going to tell someone. So if you're a parent that's listening, or, have friends, if you're not a parent, just share this, because this information is so important, and we just have to change. Just because grandma did this in 1998, don't mean you have to continue the pattern.
Yes. You brought up something for me. She's 6-year-old now, my oldest. And she told me at 5, I don't want you to tell Gigi, her great grandma. She's like, don't tell her. So I knew right then, she want to keep it private. They know at an early age about this thing, about embarrassment and what they would like to keep to themselves. So we just have to respect that. They are still people. We don't give rights to our children, I think, at all.
And it has to be done, like this work that we do. I think a book that I know, I was following these different therapists, and they have like a book club, and it was My Grandmother's Hand. I think that's a book that's related to trauma. Have you heard of that?
Yes. I haven't finished reading it, but I've heard of it. Yes.
Just something I want to read, My Grandmother's Hand, just for like the Black community. And you're also a health equity consultant. What do you do with your consultation business?
So Black women, and I want to say also Black birthing persons, but right now the statistics are for maternal health. We are dying at a rate that is 3 to 4 times higher than our white counterparts. And the CDC says that 60% of those deaths are preventable. So I was like, why are over half of us dying if you don't have to die? And so I go into majority white provider spaces, and I just teach them about implicit bias, racial trauma, and how they can be a better listener, more attuned to their BIPOC clients, because we out here. And before they decide to medicalize birth, we had Black midwives, we had indigenous midwives, but they took that away from us. They told us it was dirty, it was not sterile, people were dying more. No, we're dying more now than we had grandma and great grandma delivering at home.
Why do you think we're dying now? Is it they're not listening to Black women about the pain level that what are some different factors that's going on that,
not believing us. If we say we're in pain, or that this hurts, or that something just don't feel right. Oh, you fine. And that comes from them still thinking. They did a report of 2018 or 2019, I don't know the exact year, that Black doctors still believe we don't feel pain as much as white people. Our pain threshold is higher, which is not true at all. But they dehumanized us because they wanted to justify what they put us through during slavery.
And this is so important because over the last 3 years, we've been hearing about it on in the news and social media about Black women dying because of giving birth, not knowing that also can make someone have trauma about giving birth, because exposure of, you might not witness it we might not experience it directly, but you're witnessing by hearing about it. So it makes you fearful of delivering or having children because you think you might die or you can't take the pain.
Exactly. So true. And so what I do is I do affinity groups for Black women where we just come together and we hold ourselves and we just love on ourselves because it is hard out there. You putting your life in the hands of somebody who might not even see you as a person.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? And so we just work through that in groups.
In groups.
Mm-hmm.
So do they
Yes.
feel more free and they open up in groups and things like that?
They do. When you can tell your story, because a lot of women are in the healthcare field, like nurses. They're nurses themselves. They are LPN, CNA, all of that. We are in that field and we see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so you hold that person that you're looking at their trauma vicariously in your own trauma and intergenerational trauma. You hold it so much. And we have affinity groups and we come together and we let go of that
Mm-hmm.
and we process through that.
Okay. So with your private practice, are you going into places? Do people come to you, or is it virtual if it's anyone that's like interested in seeking your services?
It is virtual. It is virtual. COVID is still real out there in the streets. And I feel like also, and that's why I wrote this book that we just talked about, Worthy. We are less likely to get a grant. And I didn't have any money to go and purchase or even rent out a space when I first started. But I did have a laptop, I had my license, and I said I can see people. And that's what I've been doing. And that has kept me afloat. I'm on my way. So if anybody is listening to this, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a brick and mortar.
You don't. So what were some challenges that you faced, but you kept going as it relates to your private practice, or any fears that you had of like venturing off on your own?
Oh, I want to say when I was in community mental health, I just had this dream that I was going to do it. Didn't even know how I was going to do it. I was going to do it. And so I said I was open, and then there were no clients. So then I was like, working part-time still. I had just given birth. I have a pandemic baby, and I was trying to make it work on both ends. But eventually they were trying to say, you got to go back to the office. And I had no child care. And so I had to leave. And I was like, I don't have enough clients. At that point, I maybe had two. It was so fearful, feeling like I took this leap. I kept crying to my mama, saying, Mama, am I doing the right thing? I ain't got no money, et cetera, et cetera. But it worked out because I kept being consistent. I kept networking and I kept showing up for myself. And I kept, having people support me. If it wasn't for support, I don't know where I would be today.
Mm-hmm. Support is so important, and you hit the hammer right on the nail with the C word, consistency. That's what's going to set people apart from many others, that no matter what you go through, you have to stay consistent and keep going. And I like to look at different rappers tell their stories where they talk about at the point where they were giving out CDs. And one of my favorite ones, I'm currently reading his book, is Rick Ross, where you see his glory today, where he has this big mansion and all of that. But Ross explains in his book, it took him 10 years to get there first. Before that album, that song that made it big, Every Day I'm Hustling,
Mm-hmm.
that took 10
Yes.
years. And you
That
don't
took
see
10
that part.
years? No.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, don't give up on self. Greatness takes time. And we just live in this world where people want immediate gratification, and they're seeing things on
Yes.
social media. And you have to put in the work and the grind. You have to.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, I said I was moving up. I'm on the up and up. I'm still working. I'm still hustling, so don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. You still out here doing what you got to do.
Every day I'm hustling, like Rick Ross
Every day, right?
And hustling look like, because sometimes people are hard on themselves. Maybe you feel like, okay, I got this idea, but I don't have the money. Hustling is learning about it, like doing research. That's still part of the hustle. You want to know about whatever business that you're in, getting a mentor, talking to someone, spending hours on YouTube. That's part of the hustle too, as well.
Mm-hmm.
But every
Thank
day.
you for naming that.
Hmm?
Thank you. I said thank you for naming that. I do
Yeah.
when I said it, I was like, I hope people don't think I just mean working nonstop. It does mean different things.
Mm-hmm.
Different things. What works for you, keep at it. Don't stop.
Or don't compare yourself to other people or want to jump on what they're doing. What they do work for them, and what you're doing work for you. And that's when people lose their focus, where you're looking at what someone else is doing and you feel like you're not there, and you get discouraged and distracted and just stop doing what you're doing. But I just love how you said you stayed consistent and you had a support network. And that's so important. Like the things that I've accomplished, it took the village for me to get there. And I had support. And although we're like therapists, we still have support. I still have supervision. I still talk to other therapists at my job for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the hustle as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just going
I
to
want to add, I'm a therapist that has a therapist. So,
Mhm.
yes, support is everywhere.
Yeah, okay. I like that. You're a therapist that have a therapist. When we was in graduate school, it was recommended that we see a therapist. And since it was free, I took full advantage of that as well. So therapists need therapy too. And it's so important to have a space to someone that you can go to as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any misconceptions about therapy before you got into it? Like any fear before you saw your therapist? Would I connect with this person? Was it an ideal person you were looking for, a particular race or anything?
I was definitely looking for a Black woman. But I'm in Alaska now, and my therapist is not a Black woman. I mean, I tried, but ain't too many of us. But she is a person of color. Um, I do want to name that it took me a while to finally sit down and say, okay, I need help when I was experiencing my postpartum OCD.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just kept telling myself, no, you are fine. Just keep going. It'll pass. And I want to name that too for Black women.
Mm-hmm.
We always just say we can just continuously put things upon us, on our shoulders. We won't carry the community. We have got to set some boundaries. We have got to take care of ourselves and be in touch with ourselves more often than not. I don't think we get a chance to do that because everybody depends on us.
Yeah. So what are some signs and symptoms that Black women can be aware of that maybe they is experiencing postpartum? Because some people experience but don't know the signs and symptoms. So can you tell them like what are some signs and symptoms you're dealing with postpartum or postpartum OCD?
Okay. I just want to name 2 weeks after birth is when you should be like, okay, this is not normal. If you still are really fatigued and not just sleepy because you haven't gotten sleep because of the new baby, but just you feel it in your body, heavy, lethargic. You don't have an interest in maybe eating or you're eating more than you would normally. And that also depends too if you're breastfeeding because you would be eating more. You got to take up to like 600 calories more. But you will know if you just don't feel like yourself 2 weeks outside of giving birth. And I just want to name that too. If you are unable to get out of bed or you don't feel that connection with baby, I would say, okay, maybe it is time to speak with someone. And for the OCD piece, I want to name that intrusive thoughts, feeling like you might hurt yourself or the baby. You you won't do it because it makes you feel so bad, but just the thought. That's when I would also encourage people to go and seek medical help.
Because I always wondered with women who experiencing that, do their OBGYN or primary care physician, ask those questions around that time, and do they like transfer them to like therapists or anything like that? Like,
that's a great question.
Because my ideal or goal is I want to work with that population and just build rapport with different doctor office that if someone is experiencing these symptoms, like to refer them for help.
Right.
I wonder, do they assess that sometimes when they go to the
So
doctor?
they do.
They do?
They did with me last year and with my 2-year-old now. But it's so uncomfortable because they push it at you. It's like, here you go, and they look away. And it's not, how are you feeling today? Like, really, how are you doing today? So you kind of afraid to fill out this form because you don't know if it's going to be used against you or anything like that. So it's not very warm. And that's what I teach in my workshops as a equity consultant. How did you be more warm, be more friendly, and actually care about how somebody is feeling?
Yeah, give them that eye contact. So for instance, most people will be scared to answer that because they may say, are they going to put me in the hospital? Am I going to be Baker Act if I answer some of these questions? I don't know this person like that. I don't feel comfortable telling them, is my doctor going to judge me? So deep down, you may feel some type of way, but answer it differently when you're giving this report and go home and balled up. Or it can go this way where the primary care physician misquote and then have someone Baker Act because I was working with a team. And there's a difference between if I'm suicidal at this moment and in the past. And the way that they worded, the team got mixed up. She was like, I said it, but I'm not currently suicidal. That was like 2 years ago. And she was Baker Act for that. That was her first.
Baker Act is like you commit them, have them admitted
to a hospital, which was so scary for her because that was her first time ever being Baker Act or whatever. So it's important that people have correct knowledge behind when it is effective to use a Baker Act as well. Because now that may be scared to tell you the next time she go back to the doctor.
Mm-hmm. We already have a fear of the medical system because of medical racism.
Yep.
And then you're going to have somebody admitted.
Yeah, because of that. Or because if someone said they're sad, it's more than sadness than saying, okay, you depressed. That's not, you got to look at the other signs and symptoms, the duration and the frequency. But just because I said I'm feeling sad doesn't mean I'm depressed. So that's when you ask those open-ended questions to explore and make an assumption about it.
So true. I think they're just uncomfortable. They don't know how to ask those questions because then they think this gonna be on me. I'm a liability.
That's what it was,
and not a person. And this person is a person.
It's funny you said that because when I was staffing it in my supervision, that's what my supervisor brought up, the liability, and that's probably why they referred her because they didn't want anything to fall back on them, anything like that. So that could have played a factor in it as well. But this is why your consultation is so important. Your business, your group, your private practice. This is why all of it is important. And we're giving Black women terms that they can use in education as well to help them advocate for themselves, because who else is going to advocate for you if you don't advocate for yourself? And I'm glad Black women is in this field because you also have us to help and advocate on your behalf.
Yes, say that.
Were there any barriers like between you and some of your clientele when they came into therapy? You know, most people are a little reserved or didn't feel like opening up, or was it like pulling else?
So it's less so now that I'm in private practice because I have a free 15-minute consultation. And I'm screening, because when I was in community mental health, you had to see any and everybody, and not everybody is going to be a good match or a good fit. But you know what I mean, because you just they bring them on, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? So, and I think that's important to name for the listeners out there who are looking for a therapist. Not every therapist is going to be the right fit for you. You got to name what it is that you are looking for, and then go on and find it on permissivecolor.org or Therapy for Black Girls. Because I don't know much about ADHD, so I wouldn't want anybody to come see me for ADHD. I would have to refer that person out.
Yeah, so there's another thing that we can bring up. You know, sometimes people think because you're a lawyer or you're a therapist that, okay, everyone just goes to this lawyer because you're a lawyer, not knowing that people have different population that they work with and they have things that they specialize in. So you use website like what is Therapy for Black Girls, Psychology Today. You read upon what the person do and specialize in, and you can reach out to them and make that free consultation. And for some people, if they feel like, okay, I can't give you what you need, they can refer you to someone. And also some therapists do sliding scale fees. So just ask those questions. If you feel like you can't afford it, find out who do sliding scale fees or things like that. But you have to shop around like you do anything else. Just because you have one bad experience with therapy, just don't shut down and give up on it. Because I know most people say I didn't feel in connection with my therapist, or I didn't like it, or I felt like they wouldn't pull enough out of me. But sometimes tell people what you want and what you're looking for. And they can help.
And I want to name that a good therapist will ask for feedback as well. How was it today? How did that land for you today? Even if they have a little feedback sheet at the end of the session, if you don't feel comfortable naming it in session, that's good too. And I had to learn that as a community mental health therapist in supervision. You know, it's a work in progress because we human too. But a good therapist will always ask you for feedback because that's your hour that you're paying for. Either your insurance paying for it or you paying for it. Somebody paying for it. So get what it's worth.
And that's why I ask those questions up front too. Like, what do you want? What are some of your goals? What are some of your expectations? What do you expect to get out of treatment? Because the treatment plan we both driving in is not all about your therapist and not all about you. So when we're creating this treatment, it's collaborative effort. And that way you can do this check-in with these objectives and goals. My goal is this. Do you feel like you're getting what you need to reach this goal? So again, a good therapist will ask those questions. And I tell my clients up front now, if it's not working, just let me know, because sometimes people don't have that connection and don't have that feeling. Can't give you what you need, but let me know, because most people ghost their therapist or feel like I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. No, you won't hurt my feelings, but yeah.
I say the same thing. You will not hurt my feelings. Right. You will hurt me if you ghost me. I need to know so I can whatever you gotta do.
Because sometimes it just may not work. And for us, we feel like I just can't help this client. Nothing I'm doing, they're not getting nowhere. So it's like that for both. And that's when you speak up and just talk about it. But in certain conversations make people uncomfortable.
Right. But I think that's also a part of growth, having uncomfortable conversations.
Yep. You got to have those uncomfortable conversations. And it kind of goes against some of their goals where, I want to be more assertive. You want to be more assertive, but you just ghost someone because you was afraid. So yeah, it's different factors in it. But I just love it because when they come to us to learn, we learn a lot too from them and growing too in the same way. And I heard you mention you was community-based, and I was community-based before this job here. So what are some different things you did before you got into private practice? You did community-based. What other population?
So when I was in Georgia, I interned and I worked for juvenile justice. And right then and there, I just knew, because by the time those kids get into the system, in my personal opinion, we have failed them. It is too late. Home life, home structure, their own mental health. They've been through so much at an early age that you put them in a cage, basically, and you expect them to reform. What are we reforming inside of a cage? So yeah, I worked there too. They wanted mental health professionals there. And so I knew then that I was going to have to do something. And that's why I like perinatal mental health. I like the fact that if mom is having a problem, because I also believe in attachment, she got to get the help she needs so that she can be present for her children. And even dad, I don't want to put this on mom, dads, parents in general, so that they can have connections with their children. And then that can manifest into better and healthier relationships and children thereafter.
And that's what I loved about my community-based company, even though it was the most challenging, again, because you're working with different population. You can't really choose when it's community-based. And I was doing in-home counseling, in school if that's where the child were, and then during the pandemic, it was virtual. But the thing that I loved about our company, the motto was healing the family. Whether, if the child going through it, the other kids in the household may be experiencing something because of this child or the family. We believe in treating the family. So sometimes, like once a month, we'll have a family session with them and try to bring along the whole family to treat. That's what I loved about it. With community-based, what was the best thing you liked about it and worst thing that you liked about community-based?
Best thing I liked about it was my clients all felt like they could relate to me, no matter what background it came from or anything. And I was able to meet people where they were. Worst thing I would say is the high caseload. I would be booked out a month in advance, and people needed to see me more than a month out. They needed weekly counseling sessions.
That was the most draining. I would say the Zoom was a lot because, again, the high caseload, they wanted us at least, it was like 30. So that means seeing at least 5 or 6. So let us paint this picture for you. So if it weren't virtual and someone expect you to see 5 and 6, that's factoring in the driving hours. Some people is 30 minutes apart, an hour apart. So that's a lot within itself. So if you're in this field and you're interested in being a therapist, my thing to you is to do your homework on every job that you want. do an information interview, ask someone in
Mm-hmm.
the field some questions that's doing the things that you want to do. So you can kind of like have an idea about it.
I like that. Can I give mine? Because I'm just thinking about it.
Sure.
So what I've been seeing in the therapist groups is that it's actually private practice owners who take interns. So you might want to just ask one of them first, because normally we just like, okay, community mental health, we know we can get in. Go ahead, because that's what the white people do. You see people up here saying they practice and honor the license of so and so, and they getting money, and they sitting with the people that don't have as severe of the issues that you would see in community mental health, which there is nothing wrong with that. I just think that they always expect our people to go out into community mental health and fill those offices. And I'm saying, why is it just us who got to do it?
Right.
So I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah. So interns, if you're listening, you're interested in pursuing a career, ask these questions, join these groups. The group has helped me so much and connect me with people, because I had others to educate me. You can see your own clients up under someone else, like you just said.
Yes.
As a Black person, I have a supervisor, who's willing to let me do that. So that's amazing within itself, the different things that you can do. And I know I'm creative and don't want to be boxed in. So that's why I know for sure it's other things, because I want to reach the masses. And you can't do that only by working at someone's company. You boxed in that specific population. And
30 hours plus your drive time. You can't do that.
You can't. So thank you. So do you have any other things that you want to add on to this, or anything that we discussed today?
No, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. I loved all the questions. I love connecting with the audience. I felt like it was needed. We touched every level. We touched people who might not want to be a therapist. We touched potential therapists.
I know your book. We mentioned your book earlier.
Oh, the book.
When is it coming out, and what is the book is going to be about?
So the book is coming out in November, and it's not just for therapists. It's for all women entrepreneurs. I just want to put that out there too, because we have this struggle where we feel like we are alone. It's isolating sometimes. This is probably the most connection right here I had all day. So
that's how I feel about virtual.
So yes, the book just talks about how you can have a better mindset and what we need to do. It's also like a journaling experience. You read the excerpt and then you journal, and that's what we do.
Okay. So what platforms the listener can find you on? On what social media platforms you're on, and you can give your name?
Sure. So my name is Rakeeta. You can find me on Instagram at Arise, ARISE Counseling. And if you want to get to know me better on my consulting firm, I have it at RST, because that's my initials, Consulting Boutique, and you will find me. So RST Consulting Boutique on IG.
Okay. So thank you. So what was the greatest lesson? What was one of the greatest lessons that you ever learned?
I think one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned is what I'm learning now, is to be okay with resting in myself and in my body, and not having to be somebody that I'm not.
Okay. And I ended out with this question. What do you do for self-care?
For self-care, I connect with people, and I also recognize when I've had enough and I've met my limit, and I stop.
Okay. That's a good one. Again, thanks for tuning in to Prolific Mind Podcast. Share this episode with at least 3 different people. Thank you.